In this video, we are exploring how daily smartphone usage has changed throughout different generations. Some would say that the average smartphone usage has become addictive, while others would say it has become a way of life. With smartphones today, we can do almost anything from finding answers to questions in a matter of seconds to paying a mortgage safely and securely in the comfort of your home. The problem is whether or not Generation Z and Millennials have become too reliant on smartphones and what effect it is having on today's society. The purpose of the study is to determine if Generation Z and a handful of the Millennial generation are addicted to their smartphones or if it is just a new way of life. The research question we are examining is what are Gen Z's and Millennials' perceptions about their smartphone use, and is it considered a necessity or addiction when it comes to the day-to-day life? To do this, we are going to take a closer look at the differences in phone usage between the two generations, Gen Z and Millennials.
For our literature review, throughout the examination of previous research, we found that the results on how smartphones affect users to be conflicting. In the study of Duke and Montag, we see that they found a negative impact attributed to smartphone usage in the participants' levels of productivity, and yet with seeing negative outcomes, participants continued the same behavior. In our second article called "Is Smartphone Addiction Really an Addiction?" we see a similar pattern of negative effects of smartphone usage, but not enough to be able to classify it as an addiction, but rather a habit. Society's cell phone use does not meet even half of the factors that of addiction requires. And lastly, for our third study, it allows us to see the negative impact that the generations have experienced based off of the smartphone usage in their daily life. The effects included a worsening in mental health, in specific depression and anxiety, and played a factor into worsening academic productivity.
Our method for researching smartphones among generations was to make two identical surveys that were sent via social media and iMessages to two different generations from our personal connections, those generations being Gen Z and Millennials. 28 participants from Gen Z and 22 participants from Millennials gave us a combined total of 50 participants. In our survey, we had a total of 10 questions, all to be answered honestly with anonymity. We left the survey open for 24 hours after sending it out to our respective participants, and after 24 hours we closed it and reviewed the results. Through the data collected from the survey, we were hoping to find patterns that show either addiction or a change in lifestyle based on smartphone usage. We asked questions that would help us see a shift in how and why we use our smartphones in a normal day. The most relevant questions from the survey included, on average, how long are you on your smartphone a day? Do you need your smartphone to get through the day? Does your phone usage affect your work ethic? Is there anything you can't do without your smartphone? Do you try to limit your phone usage? And lastly, internet addiction is defined as a disorder with symptoms like those with gambling issues or those who suffer with substance abuse. Would you say you fit the description?
Our first question was, do you absolutely need your smartphone to get through the day? For Gen Z, almost 100% said yes, while Millennials' responses were split nearly 50-50. This correlated to our results found for the average time spent on smartphones. Gen Z's average was 5 hours and 46 minutes, as opposed to Millennials that spent an average of 4 hours and 50 minutes on their smartphones. Another question asked was, does your smartphone affect your mental health? Gen Z responded with a near 50-50 split, while Millennials were split 3-1. Based on the third article we discussed, we expected Gen Z's smartphone use to have a greater effect on work ethic because Gen Z's average is higher than Millennials' time. But based on the results from our survey, the differences in work ethic between the two generations were virtually identical.
After reviewing the results, there were a few connections we can make with the information we learned throughout the semester. For example, in our results, we saw how a combined total of 10 participants need their smartphones to communicate with their loved ones. When looking back on Maslow's hierarchy of human needs, having a prioritized source of communication fits best with the love and belongingness of the pyramid, keeping close and loving relationships via communication. Also in Maslow's hierarchy, we are able to connect our participants who use their smartphones for their career as a way to fulfill their self-esteem needs. After all, most people feel very successful after a long, hard day at work. When composing our questions for our survey, we were able to get ideas based off the normal use versus pathological use of the internet survey, provided to us in our Week 9 folder. Two statements that really stood out to us were the statements that read, "feeling the need to use it," and "repeated effort to stop using it." With these statements in mind, we produced the following questions. Do you try to limit your phone usage? As well as, is there anything you can't do without your smartphone? We also used the definition of internet addiction that was provided to us when we made another one of our questions for the survey. The definition of internet addiction was included in our question, and it helped participants get a better understanding of what internet addiction is and which criteria it fits under, and they had to decide based on the definition if they believed they fit the description.
Although most of our participants did believe they fit the description of addiction, they may not understand that their smartphones are needed to fulfill a lot of their important daily tasks, whether it be for communicating with loved ones that live far away, or for our participants who have careers that rely on their smartphones. As stated in the article, Is Smartphone Addiction Really an Addiction by Panova and Carbonell? We wouldn't call nail biting an addiction, but more of a habit, so the same goes for smartphone use. In our data, we saw virtually no change in our participants' work ethic between generations. If smartphones were becoming an addiction like so many think, then Gen Z, the ones that spend far more time on their smartphones, would have showed a greater effect on work ethic than millennials. But because they don't, this shows that smartphone use is becoming more a way of life than an addiction. We have come to the conclusion based on our survey results and the addition of past research that both generations, Gen Z and millennials, cannot be classified as addicted to smartphones. In this age where smartphones can be used for almost anything, it's definitely just becoming a way of life.